In this How to Excel, we'll be looking at how to directly label line charts. Something that hopefully looks a bit like this. In our data, I have here basically, I've selected the top 5 or so countries in 2016-17. This is just sample data, and I think I've made up the 2016-17 column anyway. Um, but I've selected 5 of the countries, and we have it in time series, so 2011, 14, and 16. As a general rule, there might be exceptions to this. There's always exceptions to every rule, isn't there? But as a general rule, we tend to put time series data in a line chart. And yeah, well, let's see if we, just to show you, just so I'm not missing a step, if you select that data, insert in the ribbon, there's probably recommended charts, but we can go straight to a line chart, and we know that that's what we want to see. Just so you're aware, by default, it tends to pull in the rows and the columns the wrong way around for this particular chart. So one quick way to fix that is right here in the ribbon. There's the switch row and column feature, and you can actually get it so you have the time going across the bottom, so 2011, 2014, 2016, and the percentages there on the side. Based on that, there are a few ways that I've tidied, there are a few ways that I've tidied this chart up already. I've taken away some of the grid lines, I've changed the axis so it ends at 100%, and I've also made the lines a little bit thicker. It might be that that is a useful thing to, if you format, right-click and format data series. In case you weren't sure, there is here in this fill tab the ability to say the width is 2.25 to big that up to 3 points, or basically making that thicker. That is, by the way, one of the ways that you would potentially highlight things. So at the moment, every single country is a different color, and that's all a bit bright. So we could go through and try and make sure everything into the same color, but maybe a muted tone, and then highlight Côte d'Ivoire, for example, because that is in the turquoise. Right, so what we actually said was the point of this quick demonstration is to actually add a direct label to these. One way that you can certainly approach this is to go in, select in here, and maybe insert a text box. It's a little bit tedious, but it's definitely doable. It doesn't move around if necessarily in the right way when you change the size of the graph and things like that. So I don't necessarily recommend that sort of approach. The way that we've actually done this is we have added basically a data label to the very last data point of each of the different series. So in this case, we have a series that is, it appears to be Guinea, which is missing a label. Now, this is the really important thing that we did, and always important on this. If we right-click now, it says Add Data Labels with an S, and that will, if we click on that, add data labels to every single point, which in this case is not what we're looking for. So if we click on that, basically again, so make sure it's basically double click, and you then right click and it says add data label in the singular. And that puts the 75 there. Now we definitely want to edit this. Again, if you only single click this, it says format data labels with an S. So we're going to click it again. So it says format data label only in our formatting window. And we can actually change the label options. And I think it's going to be the series name, which suddenly puts Guinea in there along with the value. Now, it's quite obvious that they are overlapping with Ghana, so we can just drag that down. And in this case, I have decided to keep the leader lines. I'm going to zoom in so you can get a sense of what that is. Those are those little lines right there. so that gives us a direct label, basically. I think that given that Burundi is a bunch higher, if we move Ghana up just a little bit, that might actually disappear. Well, it's kept it. You can take those away in the same formatting tab. If we go back to, now we have to be careful, we don't want to format data labels, we only want to format the one data label. And we click here, and if you say take away the leader line, that does disappear. So that might be a stylistic choice that you want to keep in mind. As a general rule, we try and keep things off, but if they are clustered like they are in this particular example, it might make sense to keep it. You'll also notice that in this case, I have bolded the country names. And this is one of those things where if you click enough, you can actually click into the label itself. And then if you hit Command or Control B, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC, that will bold just that particular label. In this case, I've also gone ahead and recolored each of them. This is a black line, so keeping the black text is fine. If you weren't quite sure how to do that, again, if you click enough times, that all gets highlighted, and you can go back to the Home ribbon, or if you're on a PC, you can right-click and the color scheme will come up. In this case, it's not exactly obvious which color that is, but you can always, through a lot of clicking and a little bit of experimentation, figure it out. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it at that sort of darker orange anyway. And there we are. Instead of having our legend, which we can always add back in, we can just go ahead and see if we have our legend here at the bottom, for example, which is very typical. You can see that, well, in fact, this is wrong because I've deleted a whole bunch of different things in here to begin to highlight only 5 of the different ones. But it's much easier to actually just keep that deleted and have those direct labels in there. And they actually go along, no matter what adjustments you make to the size of the chart, they're going to be in the right place, which is very helpful. One last thing that I would say on this, in this case, we only have 3 data points. And so this looks like it fits on here just fine. When we're working with time series data, I'm probably more familiar with working with 10, maybe 15 data points all in a row. And that tends to squish these labels over to the side. The thing that you need to do to fix that is if you are clicking here, that's the chart area, but if you click on the inside a little bit, so it's just the plot area, you see when I mouse over, the word plot area actually comes up. If you pull that over just a little bit, if it's not fitting, that will give you room to keep the labels inside the overall chart area so that they're not cut off. So that's a general approach to adding direct labels to lines.